Okay, everyone, welcome to NCURA's Region 6 Education and Professional Development Committee's Lunchtime Learning Series. Today's topic is Subaward Financial Management. A few items. We are recording this session and we will have it posted on our website. So with that, if you could please be sure to mute yourself unless asking a question or commenting. You can use the chat function to ask questions also, or feel free to message me directly. My name is Vanessa Quiroz-Holtz, Q-U-I-R-O-Z. Also remember, at the end of a session, a survey will go out and we ask that you please submit that. Let's see. So today we have three speakers. Jenna Allen, who's been 6 years in finance experience in higher education, and that includes 2 years with grants and subrecipient monitoring. Oh. Did someone say something? Did someone need something? Okay. If you could please mute yourself if you're not asking a question, please. So back to Jenna. She's with Washington State University, and she is currently responsible for updating the post-award subrecipient monitoring program to align with industry standards. Carrie Chesbro is the Assistant Director for Subawards and Subrecipient Monitoring at Stanford University. She has more than 20 years of experience in research administration at institutions of higher education, spanning both departmental and central office roles. Anke has been the lead subaward administrator for Washington State University for 4 years, overseeing the issuance and compliance for subawards and subcontracts. Anke trains new subaward administrators and leads the Wazoo subaward educational sessions. Thank you to our speakers. Please welcome them and enjoy your session.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. We're excited to be here with you today. We thought what we'd do is spend about 20 minutes talking through what we think are the keys to success in subaward financial management, and then open up for discussion or questions. But please keep those questions coming in the chat as we go through the topics, and we can pick those up as we go. Also, feel free when we get to that section of today to feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions or raise hands with the Zoom technology as well, and we will be answering those as many as we can in the time that we have allotted. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So subaward management can seem like a daunting task, such as similar to hiking Mount Rainier. And so we decided to have the Alpine hike as our theme for today. But we feel like this can be boiled down into three main components that we can rely on as our pillars for subaward management, particularly financial management, the risk assessment, our contract terms, and communication. But we need to coordinate from all involved parties, be that the central office, the department, the PI, and project personnel on both sides of the relationship. So with that, I will hand it over to Jenna to talk about risk assessments.
Thank you, Carrie. So we're going to get started with our journey at the base camp. The first thing we want to do when we're dealing with subrecipient financial management is get a great solid start. And that's going to come in the form of a base camp. This is really where we're going to learn our mountain, identify our potential problems, and create our plan to traverse or avoid those issues. And the key to successful subaward financial management is to start with a solid subrecipient assessment. So the risk assessment is an opportunity to assess our subaward partners and identify potential problems and solutions. So what are we looking for with this assessment? Essentially, we're gathering information, and this exploration into our partner might include many different metrics or criteria. But in general, we're going to review financial documents, past performance, and eligibility criteria like a SAM.gov registration or whether or not they're debarred, different things like that. The assessment process is intended to uncover potential indicators of future noncompliance. And as we find those things, we must ask ourselves how they contribute to risk. So you might consider questions such as, what is the possibility that that might occur in this specific project? How does the organization intend to fix the problem? Are they even aware of it? And if this specific thing does go wrong, how much impact would it have on our finances or on the project? It's kind of where you want to start. And then once you have an idea of the level of impact, you can implement your organizational scoring and start to communicate that out.
He's not eating.
So the folks that are involved with the risk assessment, that's really going to depend on your organization. So a risk assessment is really an ongoing process. You're not only going to do it at the start of a subaward or with a new subrecipient, it'll happen throughout the life of that subaward. And so it really requires partnership from across the organization. It's so big a task, no one can really do it all themselves. It's crucial that the people who work closely with the subawardee are monitoring the subrecipient in addition to that initial and ongoing risk assessment and reporting results back to the risk assessment team or teams. And that feedback is going to inform future risk assessment scores and monitoring activities. So here at WSU, I can give you an idea of how we break the assessment and monitoring process down. But we have several stakeholder groups that participate in the assessment process. The pre-award group is going to conduct an initial subrecipient risk assessment for new subawards and new subrecipients. Our department grant managers and PIs monitor subrecipient performance as the project unfolds. They review deliverables, make sure those are on time and are in alignment with the terms and conditions of the award. And they review our invoices for allowability. And then our post-award team completes an annual risk assessment to monitor financial changes within that organization over time. And we actually post a new risk score based on those results each year. So our stakeholders have access to that as well. So the reason that we're doing all of this is to make sure that the subrecipient we're partnering with can properly manage the funds that we're issuing to them. So before issuing the award agreement, all of this legwork is going to happen. And any risks that are uncovered are going to be communicated with decision makers and stakeholders. That way, everyone knows what's going on and can participate in finding a solution to the problem before moving forward. And assessing risk seems like a negative thing to some people. I think there's some hesitance sometimes when you get other folks involved in the process. But the process isn't designed to deny funding to the subrecipient partner, but what we're really trying to do is create a plan that protects the funding and allows everybody to successfully complete that research project. So essentially, risk assessment is an opportunity to think ahead and set up the partnership for success. And that legwork and planning that takes place during the assessment process sets the stage for the next part of our journey, which I'll turn over to Carrie.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenna. Actually, before we plan our ascent with our contract terms, I'd like to take a minute, and since we have you thinking about risk assessments and the different pieces of risk assessments, and we'd love to launch a poll question and ask you where in your institution the risk assessment process takes place. So Lisa, if we could launch poll question number 1, that would be great. Give everybody a few minutes to answer that poll question.
No, she's sick. Yeah, I know.
Okay. Do we have responses coming in? How are we doing?
We do. I'm sorry, I wasn't done.
Oh, no, you're good.
We've got about 100 of 137 participants who have responded. So let me know when you're ready to end.
Okay, let's give you about 10 more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and share those, please. Thank you. All right, so from that, it looks like we have a great variety on the different offices that help with that. And as Jenna mentioned, this could be taking place in several different components in different parts of different offices. And everyone really has a role in making all of this work. And I think sometimes our principal investigators are even involved and they don't realize it. If they know of something and they're alerting their staff or the central office to a potential risk that they'd like to mitigate, they're reaching out. And so we can use all of that information, and we can then move forward to our next phase, which is our ascent, which is our contract. So we use all the information from the risk assessment to build the contract for each subaward relationship. So our contract is our plan and our guidebook. So we want to make sure that we're including everything that we need to properly administer the project, making sure that everyone is in compliance, making sure there's a clear definition of the work that is set to happen for the subrecipient, and if they need involvement from the pass-through entity, that is clearly outlined. And then thinking about the risk assessment towards the contract, thinking about if there are areas that we are concerned with that we can build in additional terms to try to mitigate that risk. And as Jenna mentioned, we're not doing the risk assessment to preclude us from working with someone, but we want to go in eyes wide open, if you will. And if we've identified a risk, we want to make sure that we've addressed that. And that's what the regulations are asking us to do, that we take an active role in mitigating that risk for the benefit of the project and the proper stewardship of the funds. So what are we looking at when we're talking about ensuring that all of these things are happening in the contract? So big part is scope of work. The scope of work is going to outline exactly what work is anticipated being done. A strong scope of work really is our agreement of what's going to happen on the award. So in a case where there becomes any issue over work performed or who was supposed to do what, the scope of work is where we come back to that information. And so that's what needs to be strong and clear as to what's being asked. It's kind of like our performance. We have our job description and our performance review. And so it's similar to that for us as employees. So we're always going to include the standard terms and conditions from the sponsor, anything that flows down. If that's a federal source, if there's other federal law that flows down, that's always going to be in there. But we can and should include special terms and conditions if we need them for clarity in the administration of the award. If we need something for ease of management, maybe that's requiring them to bill separately by task. If there's a task-based project and we need to make sure that those components are billed out separately to our sponsor, then we'll need that information split out from the subrecipient as well. And then again,
Hey,
any of
Carrie.
those, I'm sorry?
Sorry, it's Vanessa. There is a question, and I was hoping you could answer it in this part of it. It says, even if
Sure.
a sub has increased assessed risk, how does this show up in how you deal with them?
Absolutely. Great question. Perfectly timed. Yes. So exactly. If you have a high risk subrecipient, you might think about adding the contract terms in this phase. And that could be a variety of different things. So we're talking about those risk mitigation terms, but this is a great segue right into checkpoints too. So you may add additional prior approvals depending upon what your concern is. So let's say, for example, you have an elevated risk based upon an audit finding. And the audit finding is, I always go to this one, but it's a great one, that there was a finding related to travel where travel that needed prior approval wasn't properly the approval wasn't properly requested. And so that makes the cost unallowable. So that's a situation that you'd want to deal with. So maybe you add in a term that you want to make sure that that prior approval is on file with the PTE prior to making sure that the travel is approved and paid, so that you can ensure that the costs being paid by the PTE are compliant. If there's a different risk, maybe there's a systems issue and you want to make sure that costs are being properly attributed, then you could ask for a summary of expenses, a detailed document along with your invoices, or you could have, if there's a potential issue with technical progress. You could add additional technical reporting milestones or connections with the PI that need to happen, or a small technical assessment needs to be provided with an invoice. I think it's really important from my experience that you target the additional term to properly mitigate the risk that has occurred. I know that when we first started down this road with uniform guidance, everybody's go-to was to ask for a detailed listing of the costs associated with the project with each invoice, and that created intense administrative burden. And so we wanted to make sure that we're not asking for things that aren't helping us mitigate that concern, that we're really addressing that directly. Sorry, yes, PTE is passed through entity. My apologies, and thank you to everyone for acronym busting me. It is very important to do, so please shout out anytime I say something that needs further explanation. Thank you, Jeff. It's really important that we have those conversations and we talk about what those checkpoints could be. You could also put in milestones that there may be reporting required, or invoicing can only happen once a milestone's been reached. But again, really talking about what the risk is, what's making them high risk, and how to address that properly, and in a way that is effectual and not just additional burden for the sake of saying we did something. So really kind of trying to keep that in perspective. And so we'd love to launch a quick poll here. One more, if we could launch poll question number 2 to kind of get an idea from everybody on the call today, when you might use additional terms and conditions or special terms and conditions on your subawards. And again, mark any and all that apply. And if you have other times you use them, please drop them in the chat. We'd love to see that as well. And we'll use that for our discussion here in a few minutes. Give you a couple minutes to answer that one. And Lisa, let's go ahead and display if you get to 100 again. All right, well, we're doing that. I have a quick question. Hang on, it scrolled past me real quick. How do you handle foreign currency? Must foreign subs be paid in US dollars? Do you allow a foreign sub to be paid in their currency? So for me personally, that comes down to limitations by our bank. So yes, we issue all of our awards to foreign entities in US dollars, and then we're invoiced in US dollars and pay them in US dollars. And then that transition from US funds to the other currency is happening when that payment is made between the banks, between our bank and their bank. And that's based upon mostly because we're limited to being able to pay in US dollars without some additional arrangement with our bank. And so that precludes us from doing that. And in a case where we're talking about federal funded subawards, we absolutely make sure that we issue those in US dollars, and that reports and invoices and payments are all done in US dollars as well. If we have more specific questions on that, we can pick that up again later. Okay. Excellent. Thanks everybody for participating in the poll. It looks like we've got a great mix of when we might use this. And so that is awesome. Okay, and we can go ahead, and I am going to turn this now over to Anke to talk about our friends.
Anke, you're muted.
Anke, you're still muted.
I am muted. Thank you.
Sorry, happens all the time to me, sorry. Communication to build a mountain, it takes a team. The team needs to communicate the details of the climb. It is important to gather information from all the available methods and think about information you can gather from the standard built-in types of communication and others you can create for more timely and effective transfer of information regarding a project. Then take appropriate action. If you aren't sure if something is an issue, it should be looked at. Reach out to your central office, department, PI, anybody who might have an answer on your question. It is better to have the information and not need it than not having it and to need it. No subaward problems get better with age. They do not age like fine wine. There will be whining after a time. Let's talk about some scenarios that will underscore some best practices. Please jump in with mitigation ideas or action plans that have worked for you in the past. As a climb, we have different tools that we can work with. When hiking, we need to have tools. Like good equipment, invoices can tell us a lot about information when monitoring a subaward. An invoice is an element to see how the subrecipient accounts for internal controls. For monitoring, it serves as a paper trail, and document if you have any questions. Are the expenses correct? Are the expenses allowable, applicable, reasonable, and consistent? Areas to look for on preliminary review that we do here at WSU are invoices that are going to be paid. Does it have the components necessary? Do they have the certification statement, contact numbers, contract numbers, invoice time frame, invoice amount, here current math? Is it clearly identified? Expenses are within the subaward period of performance. All additions correct. Expenses are itemized according to the subaward budget with allowable deviations. Includes the required certification statement. All required deliverables reports have been received. Technical, property reports, invention reports, anything that is in the terms and conditions that needs to be accompanied the invoice. The department verifies then that all charges are appropriate and communicated any inconsistency before the invoice is paid. Know the prime award and communicate it with the PI. Document. It is a big part of your monitoring that you document any inconsistencies, that you caught them early, or that they were fixed. Include the PI, since they will know the reporting and work that needs to be accomplished for any inconsistency. So did you have any problems with invoices before? How did you document it? Can we go to the next slide, Vanessa? Email, phone, Zoom, we have so much technology available to us. Build the relationship with your PI, with the department, do monthly check-ins. Here at WSU, we do a monthly monitoring meeting. Anything that will be helpful and communicate areas of concerns early. Informal check-ins could be like an email or a text via Teams or a meeting, a phone call via Zoom. Reconciliation, a monthly check will be helpful. How do you communicate any concerns or do monthly reviews at your institution? Could you do something better? We're here, as I said, we're using a lot of Teams, a lot of Zooms, and as I said, we do monthly meetings, not on just the monitoring side. We're doing coordinator meetings. Our post office meets with departments. So everybody is in contact. They're communicating frequently. Please, please, please build those relationships and communicate. Through good communication and monthly check-ins, you are not just monitoring your subaward. As I said before, you are building your relationship. And when you have questions, you can reach out to your friends that are in the same boat as you. It will be easier to have access to tools and a successful client, but you will have monitored and documented any problems. And this will be coming very, very important in case of an audit. The financial monitoring with receiving the single audit, financial audit is only a small piece. You are in the business of building a relationship with people inside your organization and people outside your organization. And we made it. You made it through with lots of communication, your audit, your documentation. And Carrie, it is back to you.
All right. Thank you, Anke. So we have a couple of polls, and this is, very selfish. We really wanted to know what other people were doing in this area. So if we could, Lisa, launch poll question number 3, we would love to know what kind of standard issues you see with subaward invoices, and we'd love to pick up some discussion from there, talking about some best practices for when these things come in, as far as having a discussion. So if you don't mind answering that one, and then if you have any other comments or best practices at your institution that you'd love to throw in the chat, we can start a discussion from there. And if you've been watching in the chat, we had some lively discussion about, is Canada foreign? And yes, it is. But yes, there's somebody noted for travel, Canada may be considered domestic. So really watch your sponsor's criteria for that, so that you know which type of travel it falls into, so you know what requirements are on that travel. So your travel office is probably going to tell you it's absolutely foreign, as far as how it gets coded in your system. But as far as does it need prior approval from your sponsor as a foreign travel, maybe not. So, okay. The question poll. So it looks like late invoices are our biggest culprit there. I'm guessing particularly at the end of the award, but this can happen through the life of the award too, and you're not getting the information that you need regarding progress. And then that means your financials aren't current and up to date as the pass-through entity either with the sponsor. So that is kind of a big one. Incomplete invoices, unallowable costs, certification statements not included, or invoice isn't signed is another big one in that incomplete bucket. So that's all happening. So just kind of keeping that in mind, being as kind as we can to each other, as we all are in the same space trying to get these things done. So thank you so much for that poll, Lisa. In the chat, we have some other things, not marking the final invoice final. And I understand that, if your system doesn't regularly do that, it is an extra step. You have to go in and add the final to that. But a lot of us have that as a standard part of our process. If we don't have a subaward invoice marked final, it hangs up our final financial reporting and close out in our system. So we definitely want to make sure we have that. Cumulative balances are off or not included. Yes. And this one is really big because it's really important. It's a great tool for us to know if we've made all the payments. Are we missing an invoice that we didn't know we were missing? And we only know because the cumulative total wasn't what we expected it to be based upon the invoice history. So that is a really big one. Supplier record mismatch, getting W-9s in to make sure that we can get people paid. Yet being on top of that, how often does your financial office need an updated W-9? Is it every 2 years, every 3 years, every year? How often do they do that? And being able to kind of get ahead of that in your system as well. Ooh, overlapping invoice dates. Yes, because then you have to get clarification to make sure that you're not paying costs twice. Exactly. More about Canada. That's excellent. For those of us that are very close to Canada, this is a conversation we have all the time. So, because it feels like, sometimes it's a lot shorter distance for us to get to Canada than to another state in the United States. So that does come up quite a bit. That certification statement is a big one. Yes, seeing that in there as well. Let's see. Yes, especially if you've added special terms that require some additional documents to come in with your invoice, if those aren't there, we've got to go back and ask because that's not a proper invoice at that point, right? And we have 30 days to pay a proper invoice, but proper means that we have the required items and that the invoice meets the invoice standards and that we have addressed any unallowable costs or potentially unallowable costs. And so there's a lot in there to make sure we have, and having a conversation about those special terms and conditions is really important if your central office is writing the contract and the department is reviewing the invoices for contractual compliance. So maybe one of your regular check-ins that Anke was talking about is a check-in when a new subaward is written that has special terms and conditions. Maybe you're reaching out to your central office and saying, hey, I see some interesting things in here. Can we talk through this so I can make sure that I can collect what I need? Or vice versa, if you're already having new award meetings with your central office or with your faculty member, making sure that those are part of your discussion. On and on with I'm so sorry we brought up invoice problems, but this is good to know. It's kind of, sometimes it's just nice to know that everybody is seeing the same issues come through that you're working through. Combining invoices for multiple projects onto one, yeah, that is a problem. We needed that pulled apart. No reference numbers, names, trying to figure out where this invoice has even come from and where's it supposed to be going to, getting it to the right place. That's a good day, Miriam, when you're like, wow, I don't see all these. That's great. No, that's awesome. So yeah, and going through and making sure that you have everything that you're supposed to have and moving those invoices through. But I don't know if people think about it this way, but all of that stuff you're doing is monitoring your award management as well, but you're really monitoring those subrecipients, and everything you're doing is very, very helpful. So thank you for that. Does anyone have any kind of best practices or things that they'd like to throw out as something that works really well for them to share with the group? You can just take yourself off mute and shout out or throw it in the chat and we can discuss. We want to make sure you guys use as much of this time to get any questions you have answered as possible.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi.
I think it's you and Jenna and Anke really hit it really the nail on the head on building relationships. It's really important that we have that relationship with our PIs and our faculty, not just at a central level, but as a department level, so that they know that they're giving their deliverables. Because if they're not getting their deliverables, let's stop sending them money. Let's stop paying their invoices. And I think that's a big one when we're working with higher risk subawardees. We can add in extra check-ins. We can fund them at 3 months instead of 12 months at a time. I know Anke and I look at that sometimes. So very important. I think building that relationship and that communication is a really good point you guys made. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to chase you off with the poll question, Matt. I just thought that was a great segue to pop up that last poll question about, that's exactly right. We're building relationships in all different directions, and sponsored projects in general is one of those. I think of it as an umbrella. We're encompassing so many different parts of business administration and different pieces of the research process. And so we have friends everywhere. So the poll just wants to know on a regular basis, who are your friends? Who are you reaching out to? Where can we really focus our efforts into building these partnerships? Because it seems like every day for me, it's everybody on this list and some more, where you're reaching out with something interesting that comes up, and you have somebody you can go talk to. All right, Miriam, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
So I guess I'm wondering, okay, so in general, the contracts for subawards are dealt with at a central, office, and we love them. They're great. They always give me the opportunity to add anything additional that I would like. So, I need your final reports per the reporting schedule 10 days prior to when they're due to the agency or something like that.
It's very kind of you to give them, all that time.
Yeah. But my question, I guess, is, so if given the opportunity to add additional requirements, is there a top 5 or a top 10 list that I should go to consider?
Ooh.
I would love a top 10 list.
Maybe we can create one in the chat here. Anke, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was thinking it depends on what you're trying, what kind of risk you're mitigating or what you're looking
across
for.
the board. The top, like top 10, risks that we should be, considering for mitigation right off the bat.
Well, I would say invoices with documentation with
Okay. So
that comes to mind.
invoices.
That's probably the most non-invasive one. Then technical reports with invoices. Quarterly, or depending on your invoice structure you have, maybe quarterly technical reports instead of annual.
And we go back to number 2. Does that technical reports for invoices, does that mean no report, no invoice? Or, no payment?
Or every quarter have an invoice with a technical report. You can attach technical reports to the invoice. If they're really high risk, then it's a lot of work to have a technical report with every invoice.
Right.
Depends on the audit findings. If you have audit finding in equipment, you might want to have equipment records.
And I think we want to be careful too that I hesitate to give anything across the board, because as you know, and it depends is really key in what we're doing. So if you have a subrecipient that you're worried about, and you would talk to the PI, because I think Anke is exactly right. Depending on what you're worried about, that really governs what you do in the mitigation, but you need to have that conversation with the PI too. So if I say to my PI, hey, I'm a little concerned that they need advance payments. Can you talk to me about, pulling in question from the chat here, can you talk to me about kind of the work that's happening and how often you're already in communication, and see if from the technical side, they can also allay some of our concerns, right? And so really making sure, because we're also building that relationship, again, like Anke said, Anke, I'm just stealing all your words, and putting them in a bubble here. And building that relationship with the subrecipient, and very likely our faculty member already has a relationship with that subrecipient PI. And so we want to be respectful of that relationship as well. So I think really targeting what the concern is, so that we can get to a place where everyone is comfortable, but we have these checkpoints added in. So in a place where the PI says, hey, I don't really have a structure for check-ins, maybe let's do a quarterly technical. Anke's exactly right. We can write that in as a checkpoint,
Okay.
so that they have that schedule. But I think it's really important to think about what's needed. Because so for an example, you could, if you have a project where someone is buying a bunch of equipment and you want to check in on that, like Anke said, absolutely do that. But is that going to make sense for all your projects? No, it's not. And so it's really going to depend on what's happening. Matt, cost share is an evil
Oh, yeah.
word. Sorry, I'm
It
kidding.
is.
It's not really. But yeah, making sure, like you could say, so if we're worried about them meeting their cost share requirements, that's a great example. Then maybe we ask for on their invoice, they also give us a status update on cost share spent to date. And maybe that's in full categories, depending upon what your sponsor needs or what you need, or maybe that's just a, hey, give me a total cost share spent to date on there. So there's lots of ways to do this. I think maybe a better chart is, instead of across the board, is just come up with your top 10 risk things that pop on yours, and then brainstorm, and you could reach out to anybody and kind of see what your go-to couple of options for that particular item are. I'll give it back to Anke. Sorry for interrupting, Anke. I got really worked up.
Don't worry about it. I just wanted to add that I wanted to add extra language, extra reporting to one of the subs until I went and contacted the PI. And one of our PIs said, I'm in contact with them every month. So he was already going the extra mile, and I didn't have to write extra reporting into the award because they are already doing that. So communicate.
Can I ask then,
in the end?
does everybody else require PI approval for payment of subaward invoices? Because
we do.
Yeah, because that to me, that means that they are reviewing that invoice within the context of the technical requirements of the statement of work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if they approve it, that means that the subaward is on target technically.
Right, and that's what we're using that for as well.
Okay.
And what we tell our PIs also is that if you have any hesitation in signing that invoice, call me. And let's have a conversation about that. Maybe it's, hey, I'm just waiting on a report. It's been a couple weeks since it was due. I'm not really comfortable. Maybe it's, hey, they've dodged my calls for 6 months. Okay, stop, time out. We're not paying them until we know what's going on, right? So
Jennifer just added something about, she adds language saying that asking them, the PI, if all of the expenses are allocable, reasonable, and allowable and consistent.
Yeah, and I think if you've got a standard statement you have your PI sign off on, having that language available and having that so they can sign off on that, that's great. And then you've covered anything your auditors may be looking for, what you're looking for procedurally internally, and getting all that information. Lisa popped up our poll answers there. So it looks like we already have these relationships going between central and department, which is awesome. And we're also reaching out to other offices as we need to. But if you've got, if you don't have friends in all these places and you need one, reach out and make sure that you have a contact that you can count on for information. Attend their training sessions when they're available, and then you'll know who to reach out to. Vanessa, I feel like we're at time. I will throw it back your way.
Yeah, I was looking for just a tiny pause, but there was definitely some great conversation going on. So I was struggling with whether to stop you or not. But yes, so since this is a lunchtime learning series, this is just 45 minutes to kind of talk about the hot topics. So I would like to thank Jenna, Anke, and Carrie. This has been a lively conversation. And I hope you all enjoyed it. I am about to put the evaluation link into the chat. Also know that I will send out an email with the recording once it is uploaded on our website, so you can have access to that. And if you know anyone that actually missed it, feel free to let them know that we will have that posted. But please give our Marcom committee a little time to get that uploaded. And if you have any other questions, that's it for us. Thank you for attending. And oh, one final thing, if you're interested in Lead Me, mentors and mentee applications are now available. We do have them on our website. They are due December 18th. And Matt Mitchner, who is here, who you see here, he is our current co-chair for Lead Me. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Matt. We will be happy to help you. And with that, have a good day and thank you so much.